Welcome everybody to the ultimate Yone itemization guide. With Yone getting all these buffs, right? Storm Razor, Berserkers, the crit damage buffs, there's now a better item than BORK in every single game. I was a big advocate of just D-Shield, BORK, Second Wind every single game. I did that all the way to Challenger. I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years, but with all the buffs coming out, I figured why not now? Um, to make an itemization guide, right? A new and updated guide. So let's just jump straight in. First things first, I'll show you guys my credentials here in case you don't know who I am. I've been a high elo Yone OTP, right, for basically since he's come out. Been challenger every single season since he's come out. I've always had a high win rate with him. Recently, I'm not really OTP anymore. I've been playing other champs, but I used to be. And yeah, I have a ton of mastery. Been experimenting with a lot of builds. So hopefully that can validate myself a little bit. Take it as you will. But yeah, let's just jump in, right? Let's get into the meat of it. So I think what I really want to do today is I want to keep this extremely like practical in the sense like I'm leading you to fish for yourself rather than giving you the fish. You know what I mean? So I'm basically going to try my best to explain when you would take each rune, right? And which build based off of your runes. Okay. So I think what we need to start with is actually not even at the runes. You got to start with the composition you're in. Okay. And we got to start with the mindset. So what I want to do is I want to kind of break down a bunch of different champions. We're just gonna look at some mid lane champions and some compositions here, and I'd break down if I were Yone, what would I item? What would my mindset be? Okay, because we gotta start with the mindset, and that's gonna determine what our runes and items are going to be. Okay, so first things first, you should always look at your matchup. If you're in a hard matchup, your mindset should be to take runes to survive lane. Okay, so you're in a minimize mindset. All right, so that's step number one that you got to check is look at the matchup. Are you in a matchup we need to minimize, or can you actually play the game? Right. Then the second thing you got to look at how much HP and armor are they stacking. Right. Are they going to be building heavy HP and heavy armor, or are they going to be squishy? So this would be a game where I need to survive lane, and they're going to be building a lot of HP and a lot of armor. So that's going to determine what my build is, and we'll talk about that. Right. So, and we'll just look at maybe a few more examples here. Right. If we look at Annie here, Jarvan Shen, pretty tanky, hard lane, same idea, right? We take a look at this one, not super tanky to be honest, right? I mean, sure, NASA is like a solitaire tanky, but not ultra tanky, right? And I need to survive lane, right? I think this one not really tanky. Don't really need to survive lane too hard in this one. Same thing with this one. If I was against a Victor, very squishy. Don't need to survive lane, right? So you get what I mean. Like you want to start with just like quickly get like a high level kind of overview of what the kind of comp you're against. Okay. So now what we're going to do is based off of the comp you're against, that's going to dictate your runes. Okay. Stay with me here. All right. So we drop it to the runes. So before we even look at these ones, right? We're gonna start with the minor ones. Okay, so basically every single game, to keep it simple, you're gonna be resolve tree, right? And I would say 80 to 90% of your games are second wins. I think if it gets a fizz, this is specifically mid, by the way, you want a mid optimization guide. It's very similar for top, but I'll say the biggest difference is if you take second win or build plating. For the most part, mid, I would say 80 to 90% of your games, your second wins. Let's say it gets fizz or Silas, right? Now, if you're against a heavy trading matchup, right, you want Shield Bash. If you're against a poke matchup where they have CC on slows, right, on one of their main damage spells, you go unflinching, okay? So like against Ori, you would go second wind unflinching, right? Against Akali, second wind unflinching. Against Zed, like second wind, Shield Bash. Against Silas, Shield Bash, build plating. Make sense? And then these here are always going to be attack speed, adaptive force, and health, okay? Now, for precision tree, you're going to take precision every single game, right? You take absorb life against poke matchups, so against Cassiopeia and Ori, right? You would take absorb life, right? Against melee matchups or matchups where you can kind of stat check them. There's going to be a lot of fights. You want triumph. You always take alacrity. And same idea here with cut down versus last stand. Against poke oriented matchups, you take last stands, right? Against matchups where you can kind of trade and you can be proactive, you take cut down. Okay, so that's how you determine the secondary runes, right? So again, like just to reiterate one more time, against Fizz, I would go bone plating and this, right? Against Victor, I would probably go like this, right? Against Ori, I would go like this. You get the idea, right? And that's why the high level mindset really comes into play here, right? And now we got to talk about these runes, right? So this is where the comp is really going to come into play, okay? So if you're in a hard matchup, So you should always start with your matchup, okay? If you're in a hard matchup, you need to take the best rune for your matchup. All right. So if you're against a difficult lane, like Ori, you kind of have to take Fleet. LeBlanc, you definitely need to take Fleet. Vex, you definitely need to take Fleet. Even if the rest of the comp doesn't really work with well with Fleet. Okay. You just got to change your itemization after the fact, right? And I would say fleet is about the default. I would say 80 to 90% of your games, you can't go wrong with going fleet, right? So, especially after the buffs. So, I would say start with fleet, but again, fleet is going to be good in those poke heavy matchups. And fleet is, as a weird way, is actually the best scaling rune. Which you're going to say, what? How does that make sense, right? Now, fleet is really bad at skirmishing in early game. So, that's what makes fleet kind of awkward, right? It's a good lane for a rune for lane, but it's kind of not amazing for skirmishes. But Fleet late game is ultra OP because the movement speed for sticky on the people, because Yone does infinite damage late game, and the healing is ridiculous, right? So Fleet's actually the best scaling rune, right? Lethal Tempo is the best lane rune for fighting early game, even though it's more of a mid game rune. But like for fighting, it's really broken. And Conqueror is like the best just mid game, just overall generically strong, like kind of bruisery rune. Okay. And so basically your rune is going to be based off of the comp and the items you're going to build. Okay. So if you go fleet, right, these are the items you're going to go. So if I go to my item list here, we go to Yone. So if you go fleet, you're going to go either Yun Tal or Storm Razor as your first item. Okay. So you're going to go Storm Razor when you're against a very squishy team, right? So remember how we were talking about look at the high level composition, right, to make your choice. So I want you to imagine, like, let's just take a arbitrary comp here, right? Let's take this comp here, right? This one here. Look at this. I'll choose a different color here. Let's choose blue. So the blue circle here. This is the composition. Very squishy comp, right? This is a game where I would definitely go like Fleet plus Storm Razor, right? I mean, I thought it was gonna be against like Kog'Maw or something, right? But I didn't know the mid matchup, so this would be a game where I would definitely be taking Fleet, and then I'll go Storm Razor because they're extremely squishy, right? Squishy comms, so we don't need a ton of DPS. Storm Razor is going to be the best item, okay, combined with Fleet specifically, right? So if you go Fleet, you can go Storm Razor. Now Yun Tal is going to be good when you go Fleet and you're against a more tanky composition. So if we go to, let's take this one here. So I took Lethal Tempo like a noob here, right? But I think this would be a game where Fleet plus Yun Tal would have been infinitely better, right? If I want Fleet plus Yun Tal plus IE plus Black Cleaver, I would have done infinitely better in this game. So in high DPS comps where you can't get away with getting Lethal Tempo, and you have to take Fleet, you're going to go Yun Tal. So hopefully that makes sense between when to go Yun Tal and when to go Storm Razor, right? Then your next item is always going to be IE when you're going Crit Rush. So no matter what, you're going to go IE. Right? Then your third item, for the most part, no matter what, is always going to be Black Cleaver. The reason why is that this shores up your damage if they build armor, right? Because you don't have BORK with this build, which means you need something to cut through tanks. So that's going to be Black Cleaver. You don't want LDR with the crit changes. IE is way too OP. So a traditional build here would be like Yun Tal, IE, and Black Cleaver, right? Otherwise, we can go Storm Razor, i.e. Black Cleaver, and that's fine, right? Now, if you go Storm Razor, you must go Berserker Greaves, right? If you go Yun Tal, you can go a tankier boots because it gives you more attack speed. So to either go more Mercs and Armor Boots. So hopefully you can kind of see the formula I'm making, right? Start with the comp, right? It's like, ah, man, I really need Fleet. Okay, I'm gonna go Fleet. But they're tanky. I'm gonna go Yun Tal. Great, and I can buy tank boots. Then I go Black IE into Black Cleaver, and I'm happy, right? So hopefully that gives you Fleet. You can still opt into BORK if you want, but I think BORK is going to be overshadowed from these crit items next patch. All right. Now the next build we've got is Conquer, right? So same idea with the rune page setup here. Again, it's going to be basically the same thing, right? You just swap out Fleet or Lethal Tempo for Conquer, right? And we talked about the minor runes already. So you want to go Conqueror only when you're going Phantom Dancer, okay? And so the times you're going to go Phantom Dancer is the times where either A, you really need unconditional movement speed to dodge skill shots, and B, you're in a game where you can't really like auto a shit ton and you need to be really bursty and get online quick. So I think Phantom Dancer is really good when you're in a fast-paced game where like the game is going really quick, right? Like maybe against like an Aurelia and like a Talon, right? Or your comp is really quick pace, right? You got like Jarvins and Vi's, right? Stuff where like the game is going really quick and it's not just scaling. Phantom Dancer plus Conquer is really good because this is the build that comes online the quickest, okay? Once you get Phantom Dancer, you are really OP with the movement speed and how cheap it is. You're just online right away. Now, You have to pair it with Conqueror because you need AD. Conqueror gives you the AD from that you don't get from Phantom Dancer, right? And then when you go Conqueror and Phantom Dancer, very straightforward. You go IE into Black Cleaver, and I hope you guys buy one of these tank boots when you go Phantom Dancer. You could also go the Gluttonous Greaves if you want here. If you would like, you can go the Gluttonous Greaves, right? That's fine if you want some healing. I personally think the tank boots are just kind of OP after they nerf these boots. So I would say just go tank boots. This was very tanky, does high damage. Scale's okay, right? With Conqueror, scales quite well, and it spikes really early. The weakness is that you have Conqueror. So the Conqueror laning phase is really bad. So if you're greedy and you can get away with Conqueror lane until you can get the Phantom Dancer, this build's going to be extremely, extremely good, right? So I just show you an example where Conqueror would be really good. Is this game here, right? Now, of course, I was Yone bot and not Yone mid this game, but just imagine I was mid, right? The reason why Phantom Dancer Conquer is really good is look at the game pace. So I got a Belveth, right? I got a Rakan. These champions want to kind of pull the trigger early. Their champs want to pull the trigger early, right? They got an Annie and a Hecarim. These champs want to kind of fight early game, right? So the Phantom Dancer allows me to match them, and then once I get IE and to Black Cleaver, I'm extremely durable. I'm really tanky. I can get Death Stance quickly. I could have won some defensive boots. I could have won Mercs against Annie, and I'd be in a really happy spot. Okay. Sorry, let me take a water break. Make sure you guys hydrate. All right. So last but not least, we got Lethal Tempo, which is a classic. Okay. So lethal tempo is the best if you really want to fight early game, right? So like, let's say you take Debo and you're like, all right, I'm going to freaking send it early game. I'm going to be super aggressive and I'm going to push the pace of the game. Then lethal tempo is really good because lethal tempo is the best fighting rune early game. Okay. So you would probably opt in for like a D-bow, and then you go straight into the lifesteal and the recurve bow into BORK, and you just go the traditional build, right? Everyone knows this build at this point. I don't need to overemphasize it. A BORK is really good against HP stackers, right? And BORK's really good for that one item spike. So if you're like kind of snowballing and you're taking lethal tempo, you take an ignite, got D-bow, I think you can go for BORK, right? I think there's better options nowadays, but this would be the mindset when you're going BORK, right? So hopefully that kind of clears things up, right? Hopefully you guys can kind of figure out now, like, okay, I'm in loading screen or before loading screen, like during champ select, I see all 5 champs. This is the thought process, right? And this is going to determine number one, my runes, right? And number two, now that I have my rune, what itemization am I going, right? Now, last but not least, we got D-Shield versus Debo. These are the only two starting items I'm going to recommend. Pretty straightforward. You go D-Shield when you're against poke-oriented matchups. You go Debo when you're not against poke-oriented matchups, right? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, there's some other niche builds. Like you can rush Shield Bow if you want. You can rush IE if you want. There's these other niche builds. But to be honest, these are like going to be the most stock standard builds, and these are going to be the builds that will actually give you results. Okay. And like, yeah, maybe people will cook up other stuff, but I just think stick with these. You can't go wrong with any of these builds. Okay. So now that we covered all these builds, right? Now you're probably thinking, all right, well, what do I do once I'm at 3 items? What do I do once I have Phantom Dancer, i.e. Black Cleaver? What do I do once I have Yun Tal, i.e. Black Cleaver? Like, what do I itemize now? Okay. So the number one item you want to build as these items is Death Dance. Okay. Death Dance is the most broken item in the entire game. Okay. Math-wise, I believe Death Dance is also actually the best item against magic damage and AP damage as well, just because of that passive, right? That damage reduction passive, especially because Yone, you're weaving in those Ws, you got teammates that can heal you, you've got lifesteal, you got Conqueror, you got Fleet. So taking damage over time instead of upfront burst is really, really OP. Not to mention, if you quickly get a kill, you get the Death Dance reset, and you're all of a sudden chilling, okay? So I recommend after your 3 core, basically every single game you can go Death Stance, right? I would recommend literally every single game to just go Death Stance, right? And then now basically you've only got one slot left at this point actually. So typically for my last spot, I'll either go Spirit Visage if you have like a more healing oriented build with like the Gluttonous Greed, and you got like Conquer, or you got Fleet, or you have healers on your team. I think Spirit Visage could be quite good. Otherwise, I think Jackstraw is really good if it gets a lot of hybridized damage. Right, Jackstraw could be really good. And the last thing I'll say is like I think Sterax is also really OP because Sterax gives you tenacity, right? And Yone is kind of vulnerable to CC, right? So you go Sterax because a lot of these builds don't use Shield Bow nowadays, right? You're not actually utilizing Shield Bow. Only the BORK build has Shield Bow, so that means you can actually buy Sterax. Or the last item here, you could go Bloodthirster if you want, or if you need more healing. I think this item is kind of bait. It's kind of shit, in my opinion, for Yone. Most of the time, you have Fleet, you have more than enough healing. You have Absorb Life, you have enough healing. You have Conqueror, you have enough healing. You have Gluttonous Creators, you have enough healing. So I think Bloodthirster's kind of bait. You can do it if you're snowballing, if you can't get bursted. And then obviously, if it gets a ton of CC, you could go um, Mercurial Scimitar if you want, right? So hopefully that makes sense in terms of itemization. I think what we'll do real quick is we'll just again find some matchups here, some just random games I played, and we'll just isolate their champions here, and we'll talk about what build to go. Okay, so let's just find an arbitrary lane. Let's just take this one here. So like against this composition here, let's say we're against this composition. Um, Again, first thing I would think about is like, what's my matchup? I'm against Ari. Okay, so if I'm against Ari, I would probably go Fleet so I can survive lane. So I would go something like this. She doesn't really have CC, right? You can dodge your charm. So I will go something like this, and then I will go Storm Razor because they're all squishy, right? Boom, easy. Okay, so now let's go into another comp here. Let's just find another arbitrary comp here. Do. Let's just take. I'm just looking down. Let's take this one. Okay, so this one's a game here where the game pace is extremely quick, extremely fast paced, right? They got a Katarina, she was a snowball early game. They got Lee, they got York, all these kind of quick paced champions. And I have an easy matchup, so I don't really need a strong laning rune. So I'll probably go Conqueror, second win, Shield Bash, and then go into the PD build, right? Boom, check that one off. Let's keep going. All right, let's just take this comp here. So this one, this is an easy, I would say, Fleet into Yun Tal game because they got Wukong, they've got Victor, which is a hard lane, and they got Garen, which is pretty tanky. So this would be a game where I'll go Fleet into Yun Tal, right? Um, this game here, this is probably a good. If I was against Victor mid, probably Fleet into Storm Razor this game. You could also go with Yun Tal in this one. Um, and then I think like a Cassiopeia lane here. Like let's just take this one, a Cassiopeia lane. They got Cassiopeia, they got Pike, they got Belva, they got some HP stackers, right? Cassio, Belveth, Yorick, right? I would say you could go BORK with Lethal Tempo this game, or you could go Fleet with Yun Tal, right? So yeah, I kind of ran you guys through a few matchups to kind of run you through the thought process. But that's what you got to be thinking. Start with your matchup, right? Then start with what's your itemization against the rest of their comp, right? And think about your core, right? So there we go. That's the itemization guide. We did that in under 18 minutes. Um, Hopefully that kind of teaches you guys how to think about and navigate the itemizations and the runes, right? I tried to keep it really straightforward, right? I tried not to cook too hard because you can obviously like kind of indefinitely cook with Yone. So I just kept it very practical. This is exactly how I'm going to be thinking about it. And of course, if you have any questions, you can shoot me a message. Otherwise, appreciate you all you guys for watching. Leave a like, a comment, and a sub if you like the video. And of course, feel free to reach out and send me a message if you need help with itemization. Otherwise, go look with your Yone journey, guys. I'll catch you around. Peace out.